Welcome to Closing Remarks. I'm Dara Shareef, your host. I have with you today Ben Wagner. Ben has been with us for 6 years. He's a senior member of our origination team and thought he would be the perfect person to bring on. Ben, introduce yourself.
Laura, thank you very much for the invitation and excited to be here. Great things on the pod so far. And I've spoken on my side to business owners about the content that is rich and pure and speaks directly to what business owners are going through. And the content that you've brought in so far is exactly what we're able to articulate to our business owners about what may come next.
That's why we have Ben on today. So Ben is at the sort of front lines talking to business owners every single day. So this is a question and answer pod, and Ben's going to bring the questions, and I'll deliver what I can in terms of answers. But he's the stand-in for the audience, and there's no one better at it because Ben talks to business owners every day, all day. So again, welcome and fire away. What's your first question?
First question is one that I receive often, right? And we try to prioritize these that wouldn't necessarily be fit into buckets in particular by industry or by valuation
Yeah.
size, but more so just about what do I do next if I'm a business owner? It's the number one question outside of what's my business worth, if
Yeah,
you could imagine
sure.
that. But really, it's about the market preparation. I think it's oftentimes underrepresented how important that preparation process is. Many of our clients think I'm going to build my business to a point where it's now pretty enough to go to the dance and all the buyers are going to be there. But those conversations
Mm.
need to be started much earlier in the process,
Yeah.
oftentimes months, if not years, in advance of an actual transaction. So the first question is I'm going to put you back into the business owner mode that I know
Okay.
you once were.
Yeah.
And it's if you were in my shoes, and again, this is the audience shoes as as our business owners listening on the pod, would you pursue the market now or wait 2 to 3 years until my EBITDA is stronger, and I believe I'll be more valuable to the market?
No, it's a great question, and we certainly have gotten this question as much as almost any other question. And I think it presumes some things. Let's pretend we're lawyers. It presumes facts, not in evidence. So to suggest that you know for a fact you're going to be more valuable or have more EBITDA in 2 to 3 years is flawed logic. It will say that flawed logic and nothing more. It's probably more irresponsible than that. But the notion that you have that sort of level of control of where you're going to be performance wise in a couple of years and not controlling for these exogenous forces, these outside forces that you have no control over. So, sure, if you can operate in a vacuum and you can grow 10% every single year for the next 2 to 3 years, like you may never want to sell. But that is assuming something that you have only some control over. And then you're growing and it's happening, it's great. All of a sudden, liberation day 2 happens, and now your business goes to zero, right? Or maybe you hit a real stumbling block that you have very little insight into or control over, right? So the notion that you can just keep on going and grow for the next 2 or 3 years or 20 or 30 years, it could happen, but you're ignoring the fact that it may not happen. And if you're considering a sale, then you should consider a sale. There are facts in your life that should dictate whether you want to sell or not, that are not just market driven. If you hear that the market is incredibly hot and valuations are high and cost of capital is low, and that's the driver of selling your business, in my view, and you may not want to hear this as one of our origination guys, that is not the reason to sell your business. It could be one of the reasons, but facts that are sort of unique to you in your life should drive that decision, which is it. And my rubric is when my time is more valuable than my money, that's when I want to sell.
Right.
Because the thing about high functioning business owners is they can always create more money. We have yet to figure out a way to manufacture more time. We create hacks. They're fake. It's not manufacturing more time. Maybe you sleep less. Okay, that's a great hack. It's going to cut your life. So it's not really a hack. Are you doing four things at once? Okay, you're not doing anything 100%. You're probably not going to be very good at any of them. So that's, in my view, waiting 2 or 3 years just because you're assuming you're going to be keeping on going up and to the right, flawed logic, and a lot of things can go wrong.
Well, and it limits your choices, right? And it's making the assumption that exiting my business only means selling 100%.
Right.
And, I got into this business. My grandfather ran a small plastic injection molding manufacturing business in the state of Pennsylvania. Really only had one customer, it was Hershey Company. Great
Oh, sure.
customer to
That's
have.
a good customer.
And eventually was part of a roll up, with multiple buyers at the table. And his partner took that roll up, and my grandfather bought his time back. Right. And
Yeah.
he just didn't know what his options may be. Right. Which is kind of a part two question then
Yeah.
is if you're definitely going to sell your business one day, but you might feel that it's quote unquote too early.
Yeah.
Right. And, I don't want any potential buyers to waste the opportunity or, there's fear of, maybe a stale listing if I've been on market for too long. Maybe speak to that from your experience because that is something that it hit home to me personally. We could have been part of a multi generational
Yeah.
trust,
Of
and
course.
instead we had a grandfather who is still around. God bless, But thinking about it from a business owner's perspective, yes, you may want to sell it completely, but there are other opportunities, especially that we introduce our clients to daily. That also quote from Grandpa Reinhardt: "I reserve the right to change my opinion when I have more information." Right, and
Yeah.
we're going to bring that information along. So maybe again, just speak to the business owners about what this process can yield. That might not just be a sale in 2 years.
It's a great question, and your grandfather is clearly a wise guy. It's a great reserving the opportunity to change your mind is a great it's a great philosophy, and one that I hold myself. I'd say this: if you're selling to a private equity fund, there's a good chance they're going to make you hold a piece, right? And that's not a bad thing, right? So if you still believe in this business and the growth trajectory of the business, and you think with the right partner it's going to keep going up and to the right, and you have this inflection point, and this is hopefully a very visual podcast. I hope people are watching because my hand is levering up and changing the slope of the line of the growth curve. If you find that you've got something that requires jet fuel, it requires intellectual horsepower and a Rolodex and capital, a private equity fund is a great partner. They also will kind of demand that you hold 20%. Right, so that's a great opportunity to sort of monetize your life's work, get a good chunk of cash at closing, and protect yourself and de-risk, and also stay in it, and maybe stay in it in terms of having a board seat or having a leadership role on the team in some way, or become the chief sort of evangelist. Right, you're not the operator anymore, but you're the person sort of out in the public, sort of speaking on behalf of the business. That's a great role for a founder, and it also gives them incredible upside. We've done business deals where they'll sell 80% and they get a nice chunk. They keep 20 and there's a future sale and that 20% is bigger than the 80, right? So they de-risk, they put a chunk in their pocket, but they were there for the ride when it really took off. And they're a part of it. And that 20% could be double the size of that 80 if it's
Right.
done right. And remember, a private equity fund coming in, that's their buy-in price. They want it to go at least three times that. Three times cash on cash or MOIC, that is their mandate. So just imagine that. You have a second event that 5 or 6 years later, that's bigger potentially than the first. Now you're talking. Now you're really talking. So yeah, there's a lot of different versions of structure that allow you to stay in it, make a ton of money, but also have that opportunity to make more down the road, and also hand that business off to someone who is, a good caretaker of your legacy. Now, there are other structures that allow you to keep a piece in terms of upside, through like warrants and options. And there's a lot of creative structures. You'll never know unless you actually talk to an advisor who knows what they're doing.
Right.
So that means taking the business likely to market and seeing what the market will bear. And even for that guy who's a couple years away, there's no harm in taking a business to market. That means being market ready. But taking it to market shows you your options. It'll also show you the holes in the business. It helps you create a game plan for how you fix those holes.
Right. Yeah, we think oftentimes too that I'm ready now, but there's going to be holes that need to be plugged that only the buyers can tell you what
Right.
those holes are, right? They're the ultimate ones who are valuing the business.
That's right.
But you mentioned private equity, and what say you to those that have a black eye against
Sure.
private equity and say, I don't want the golden handcuffs?
Right.
Or my cousin's ex brother in law 10 years ago sold to private equity and ran the business to the
Yeah.
ground, right? We've heard those
We
stories.
have.
That's not the private equity of today. So what are your thoughts behind running a process that identifies the right private equity, right? And how they can deploy, kind of that second bite of the apple mentality, which
Yeah.
could be greater than the first, and helps a business owner truly recognize the full potential of what their business can be with owners, operators who are also invested financially,
Yeah.
right, into the business. So maybe walk through, what a business owner can yield from understanding the true role of private equity as a growth equity partner to pour that gasoline on the fire, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think the best way to think of it is go into market with an open mind and an open heart and figure out what the attributes are that you're looking for in a partner. So obviously these guys are trying to get some money out of this thing, right? So, whether you sell to a strategic or a family office or a private equity fund, you're going to get a lump of cash at closing, and you're likely to get some other contingent piece, or maybe there's a note or some other element down the road. That's sort of universal no matter who you sell to. So then it's about what are the other attributes you're looking for. You're looking for someone who really understands your business, that is in your business, that you could sort of just like retire quickly. Well, a lot of strategics will have people who can take over your job and have you sort of ushered out quickly, which is great for some people, but others don't want to change how they operate.
Mhm.
So if you are, I don't know, if you're an electrical contractor and you sell to another bigger electrical contractor, they're going to have views on how you should run your business. And they're going to have their own KPIs and their own culture, and they're going to measure differently. And they're going to require you to change at some point. It's just a fact of life. That's why they're doing it, to create the economies of scale and scope to create accretion. And there's no reason to buy you unless they can do that,
Mhm.
to create that operating leverage. So if they don't do so, that's why they're buying. So understand that if you sell those strategic, there are some potential downstream issues. They're going to make changes. A fund is going to look at it differently. It's a financial investment. They have some help. They can help you from a governance perspective at the board level. They've got a lot of capital, help you deploy to figure out, hey, do we want to tuck in some businesses? Do we want to invest around it? Do we want to launch a new product or division or service? So they can help in that way. They also have operating partners. So there's value there that they might have some like exited entrepreneurs that have done what you do in your industry that can be there on the board to really help you. If that's what you're looking for, great. If you will not hold a piece of this business without, you know, owning 100%, and we have clients like that,
Mhm.
I'm either going to run it or I'm not. And if I'm not, I'm out. If that's the case, private equity is probably not for you. But I wouldn't let this notion that private equity comes in there and they just sort of slash all your bodies and they cut costs and that's all they do. That's a really antiquated notion. Listen, they still are looking for efficiency. Like, why wouldn't they? I mean, every company looks for efficiency. So if you have three companies that do similar things, you're going to try to figure out a way to, I don't know, have one insurance policy
Mhm.
and one insurance broker and try to create those economies of scale because they can pull costs out of the business. That's not core to the business, though. That's ancillary. That's where they find efficiencies. They're not looking to cut your sales manager because they have one over here. They might invest more into your sales department, right? So I want to make sure that people understand that the notions about private equity from the largely from the 80s, you read Barbarians at the Gate, and it was about overly leveraging the balance sheet of the target and your own balance sheet as the buyer to put as much debt in this thing as possible and sort of financially engineer a profit. That is not how things are done anymore. They're backing leadership teams, they're backing the team below the leadership team. They're buying in and they're trying to triple or quadruple the value of that business in 5 or 6 years.
Right.
That's the idea. So if you see a vision and that vision aligns with the fund's vision and they have the capital and you believe in the team, it's a pretty good fit. If you want to sort of have someone who is in your industry and you don't mind some changes a bit to the culture and how you do things and some of the systems and processes, and you see that value, and a lot of our clients do because they speak the same language and they have more comfort that way, then a strategic is a good fit or a family office. So, again, the best idea is take it to market because we've had so many clients who have come and said, I am not selling a private equity fund. And then we bring them to market and we say, just listen. Just listen, and they fall in love with the vision of that fund. And oh, by the way, they've got an operating partner who is just like you and brought it from 5 million to 100 million. And you love that guy or that gal, and you fall in love with that story and you change your mind. You have to have a willingness to change your mind and just incorporate the new facts on the ground. That's the best way to create the optimal outcome.
Yeah.
Just don't go in there with preconceived notions. Learn from the process. I like to think that we learn from the process, even though we do it every day. The best outcomes come when you have an open heart and an open mind and you evaluate the options in the changing landscape as you go.
And it speaks to, having more information, right? And then making more informed decisions, and going into it closed-minded can potentially close doors that our clients may not have known were wide open for them. And when you speak to the consolidation in certain industries, you mentioned electrical contracting, no greater benefit than
Yeah.
HVAC. And
Yeah.
all anything that touched commercial and residential construction was on fire over
And
this
I mean,
past.
think of it, if you're an HVAC contractor, all the things that touch that HVAC unit. You got electrical, you've got plumbing. There are so many synergies there. And that's why you had these things blow up. Because not only HVAC buyers and private equity buyers, but hey, I'm an electrical contractor. Just think of the guy who's the drywall guy. And their biggest problem is these electrical contractors are so late all the time. They're unreliable. And I can't do my work until it's the behind the wall is all the electrical is buried behind there. Now you're waiting. Well, maybe you go buy an electrical contractor.
Right.
We've done it. That was our pitch. Like, what's your biggest challenge? Delays, man. We can't have a reliable schedule because we're always waiting on the plumbing and we're always waiting on the electrical. It's like, well, have you thought about buying them? It's like, whoa, there's
So
an epiphany,
some synergies here.
a little bit of a synergy. And
Yeah.
it not only does it, okay, you have this a feeder mechanism, right? The plumbing and electrical can feed the drywall and vice versa, but also you're cutting those delays and time is money.
Right.
And that's how we think here at Benchmark. And I think buyers think that way as well. You just have to kind of give them sometimes the game plan.
Right. One of the things that I find unique that I want to get your opinion on is the strength of our client's team, right? They're like family. Many of them are
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Multi generational, single family owned businesses, spouses are involved, children are involved,
Sure.
cousins and nephews, and those that have been around the business long enough that now they're like family. Um, and one of the number one questions that I receive is, well, what if the buyer doesn't value my team?
Mm.
Um, what would you think about from a business owner's perspective? Again, kind of putting the shoe on the other foot here with ensuring that the right partner is brought to the table, right? Because no one runs a business the way that I've run it. I've always run it the best way that I know how
Sure.
because it's my own idea, therefore
Yeah.
it's great. Not to say that it's not, but to ensure that your teammates and those that are like family are also well positioned. And I guess the question then would be, what benefit would I have as a business owner to run maybe a more broad process, which is a little bit anxiety driven for a
Sure.
business owner when
Yeah.
I already know the 2 or 3 players that are in my local community,
Yeah.
right? So what can you speak to even either from your background or just something in theory that we should be thinking of as business owners to, maybe recognize our worth is greater than what's just directly in front of us
Yeah.
and certainly the strategies of running a full process the way that we do here at Benchmark can really open up doors for the next generation to further grow and to further diversify and not just do a little bit more of what you're doing in the current situation.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions there, but those who see sort of the value in your team, it'll show up in the offers for sure. If they don't value your team, you may not get an offer, even though they like the idea and the cash flow profile and even like the geography. The ones who play and play aggressively are the ones who actually value that team. So the second question I think is a really important one. I mean, you want to create a universe of buyers that is representative of the overall universe as possible, right? So we go broad. Yeah, we PBK Architects, I've talked about this one in this podcast before. We had 3,000 people on this list and we called all of them. And the reason is that you just don't presume to know who the buyer is. I think there's a lot of sloppiness in my industry, in our industry, where there are known buyers. And that's great. We call them too. But to presume that the best buyer, the right buyer is among that list of 50 names is lunacy in my view. It's intellectually so dishonest. Because if you think about how a value chain works, if you just look at the people who are doing the same link in the value chain and those who are sort of a link above and a link below, and that's your universe of buyers, that might be 75 buyers. But there are folks who have a value chain that's sort of adjacent that could very easily sort of cross refer or disrupt your value chain, right? Think about the disruption that's happening today through technology, right? These clear lines, they're gone. They're changing by the day. So this notion that there's only a couple buyers who will really understand my business, they're in the town, you might get a deal done that way. The chances of you getting the optimal deal where you're going to monetize your life's work, get full value for it, and also find the right caretaker for your legacy, your team, your family, the chances are so remote. So the way to do it is you open it up to the broadest potential, like I would say, eh, our clients have to have a willingness. What's the broadest we can go that's still comfortable for them? We would love to be shooting a blunderbuss. I don't know for the audience, if you don't know what a blunderbuss is, you back in the 1600s, the pirates would have these gigantic shotgun-like things where they'd stuff everything in it. Forks and knives and pots and pans, and they'd fire this thing at the other ship. And, people would get impaled by a fork and they'd die by way of fork. It doesn't happen much anymore, right? So that's a pretty broad sort of spray of shot, right? A shotgun is pretty broad as well. A rifle is very precise. We also hear the scalpel, versus a chainsaw metaphor. We would like to go as broad as possible because it opens up more possibilities. The more we talk to, the more folks with different sort of ideas that we talk to, the smarter we get. And our we build out a process in sort of like through micro pivots, and we get smarter. And every time we have a conversation, we get informed, and our next call is smarter because of it. And that's why we do it that way. So, you know, opening up the universe of buyers is going to create different structures, different valuations, and you're going to get someone who offers you 3 times EBITDA and someone who offers you 10 times. And the reality is, a little secret here, they're both right.
Right.
So that guy who's offering you 3 times is buying a fungible pool of cash flow. They see $4 million in EBITDA, and it's just worth $4 million in EBITDA. And that person who is offering you 10 times can do something with that 4 million. They don't even care about the 4 million. They're just using it to value you. What they care about is what that actually drives. Because they have a key to unlock dormant value in the target, or the target has a key to unlock dormant value in the buyer. That's when you have accretion, but you can only find that by looking in a broad way,
Right.
and throwing away preconceived notions. This idea that why would they be interested in me? They're not going to want to buy me. You know what? You won't know until you ask,
Right.
and you won't know if you hire a firm that's not going to ask because they already know. And if they think they know, they're wrong.
Right. I'm going to put your buyer hat on quickly, right? When you're in the mindset of a buyer, how many businesses do you look through from a generation
Yeah.
perspective, to understand the business, to be able to ask intelligent questions about the financials, where you may have some deal flow, either it's, a private equity fund with, $100+ million of assets under management, or a good, strong strategic with a
Mhm.
nice, healthy balance sheet with a lot of eagerness to deploy that
Yeah.
capital. What's the likelihood of identifying the right buyer? Because many of our clients are receiving quote unquote offers or interests or
Yeah.
inquiries from buyers directly. And I always caution them, right, to vet the buyer, right? Ensure how many deals have they done? Where are they at in their fund on that side? Is there any strategic alignment if it's a buyer that you may not already have an intimate relationship with? But walk me through that buyer mentality of what are they looking for if they are reaching out to a business owner directly?
Well, so it's a great question. That is a proprietary deal, right? So every professional buyer is looking to get a deal in that hits their basic criteria that's unbanked. If they can find something that's unbanked, they're going to pay half, in my experience. That's a number I'm making up, but it's that dramatic.
Right.
So if I can call, Kyle, who is over there helping us with this recording, and Kyle has a business, and I can call him and tell him I'd pay him this for his business, and he's excited by that, I know for a fact that I've got him. Now, if Kyle calls me afterward and says, I got this call, here's what he's saying, like, then that fund is, they know now that they've got to dig in. They've got to do a lot more work and figure out if they can justify a market multiple,
Right.
right? Because they're looking for a way to buy this thing for a song. It happens less, and every time it happens, I tear up because I know, one, it's a missed opportunity for us, and two, someone is not ascribing enough value to their life's work, and it drives me insane when that
Right.
happens. So, because private equity funds, strategics, they are absolutely incentivized to buy at the best possible price, especially if the seller doesn't know it. The seller doesn't know that they're being undervalued. They're still excited about the deal.
Right.
So that's what they're looking for, is a proprietary deal. A bank deal will drive a completely different outcome.
Right.
Just a completely different outcome.
Yeah. So kind of building on that one step further, is there risk then from that business owner to hire an M&A advisor, right? Oftentimes the feedback is, well, I don't want to disrupt the
Right.
relationship, right? We've had some good conversations, we've shared financials, there's a
Sure.
lot of strategic alignment, and I don't need any help getting this deal done. Walk me through your mindset
Sure.
of what comes post LOI and how important is having a team to really represent your interests from start to finish.
So let me go back a little bit because I think when you get an unsolicited bid from somebody, it's usually not a real bid. And so I covered this in some videos I had done on LinkedIn a while back. An unsolicited bid is not an offer. It's a it's an inquiry.
Right.
It's an appetite check. They want to see, hey, is there something there? Because once they do, they're going to dig in. And they haven't done any work yet, so they can't justify evaluation. But if you're waiting for someone to come to you and write you a check, there might be someone. But the best outcomes are built, not found. I close every podcast with that, and that's based on an article that I'd written maybe a year and a half ago for one of the publications here about unsolicited bids from buyers and how they're just fool's gold. They're not real, right? They're not real. Even if you make them real, they don't become full value because you're not bidding against anybody.
Right.
There's no competitive tension. So, and the reality is, a real buyer will not walk away when other buyers are introduced. They won't walk away when they hear that Benchmark is representing the seller now. They'll get mad. They will. They get mad because they know their price is going up and the demands are going to be significant on them. We're going to make sure we pressure test their offers against other potential offers. We're going to make sure that they work for it, that they don't kill our seller in terms of structure, that they don't over lawyer the document, right? We're going to fight them on things that are not market. And we're going to fight for our clients' interests. And our clients don't tend to hire M&A attorneys unless we help them.
Right.
Because why would they? They wouldn't know. They don't do this professionally, whereas the buyer does. So the buyer's bringing SCAD and ARPs to the table, and an unbanked client is bringing the lawyer who did their trust for their kids, or a real estate deal, or their divorce. We've seen this,
Mhm.
and they're overmatched, right? So yeah, it goes back to broaden the aperture here. Let's maybe those guys are the best partner, but you'll triple the offer if you bring in somebody who's also bidding against them. And if they have conviction and they can do the most with it, they can pay that. But in a universe where the buyer is one or two or three people and they're not competing, there's no chance you get the best outcome.
Right.
It is 0% chance.
Yeah, and I find, where business owners maybe get a bit reluctant to have a further in-depth conversation with our team here at Benchmark is that they think they can do the deal on their own, right? And the nuance that comes into structuring a transaction, post the headline price, we oftentimes say
Yeah,
that's a small percentage of the overall transaction value. And, the role that we play is ensure that we're extracting as much value for you as the business owner as
no
possible,
doubt.
which does protect your life's work and your children and most important, your employees.
So let
Um,
me answer the second part of the question because that thank you for saving me there because I forgot to add the part that's pretty important. So once you sign an LOI, let's just say you get an LOI signed without bringing in an advisor, without going broad. The work to get that deal closed is Herculean. We have teams of 12 people who are doing this work, plus plus the lawyer, and plus the accountant, and plus the seller. So a lot of work gets done to get this deal closed. You need somebody pushing, banging heads together sometimes. The lawyers fighting over nonsense, trading the purchase agreement through the red lines back and forth. Every time they send back a red line, it just costs money
right.
to the seller, to the buyer, and you're killing time. And I've been saying this since I got here, and people have been quoting me on it. Time kills deals. Time kills deals. So we come in there, and after two turns, we're like, no more turns. Let's create an issues list. Let's have a phone call. Let's address these issues. Let's negotiate the issues. Have the lawyers listen while the adults, the business owners, the business folk have this conversation, and the lawyers paper it. And you'll save $100,000 that way. And by the way, you might save the deal
Mhm.
because you're cutting 3 weeks of nonsense back and forth out of the process. The passage of time kills deals. You can't stop the passage of time, but you can stop wasting it, which is a big part of it. So you have to have someone driving this thing to get the best possible outcome. And again, if you get it 85% of the way to closing, guess what? No one sends a wire for 85% of the money. It is a binary proposition. It's a zero or a one, and you need somebody fighting for you to make sure that that becomes a one.
Right. Yeah, and I think the overall takeaway from me on this side, again, those that are listening and hopefully watching is, having a team that supports you,
Right.
right? And I know oftentimes, we have no problem going to legal, right, for, any legal work that we have, or the CPAs and accountants for the financial work that we have
Yeah.
to make more informed decisions in the business, and bring in an M&A team where this is all that we do, right? And, having that team with decades of experience and billions of
Yeah.
dollars of transactions, we know a thing or two. And one thing I like that you say is just more reps, right? We've seen it, right? We
Yes.
hire former buyers, we understand the buyer appetite, we're engaging with them every single day. So it's almost a pre-objection handling exercise that
Right.
that we're truly able to best present, what your business is, where it's been, and where it can be, with a team that is skillfully positioned to maximize your value.
No, that's exactly right. And so it isn't like we are the lawyers in the deal and we're not the accountants in the deal, but we do know what market is. So, for a while when I was doing deals, and I don't really do deals much anymore, I read more purchase agreements than any lawyer in Florida. I just did. So, was I a better lawyer? No. But what did I know what market was? Yeah,
Right.
better than probably anybody. So I would just point it out to the lawyer. Listen, this is not a market term. I don't know what it all means. I kind of do, but it's not my job to, and I'm not qualified to make a recommendation on what it should be and whether this should be a fundamental rep or not. But I can tell you what we see, having closed 220 deals last year
Right.
and over 200 deals the year before. I looked at a lot of purchase agreements, and I have a good sense for that. So it is about repetition. It's like, we're not the smartest people on the planet. We get more reps than anybody. We put together bigger deal teams. So we do know how to add value in a deal, and we do know how to stay in our lane, but also assist people who are in different lanes.
Yeah, and it goes back to the initial question of what's my business worth,
Yeah.
right? Well, get it in the eyes of the beholder, to those that are actually valuing it, which is the buyers, right?
Yeah.
And then be able to lay those out on the table and understand the structure, understand the alignment, understand the values, and then you get to determine essentially, well, that's market,
That's
right?
right.
Not just because you hired, an accountant to run a financial spread based on an antiquated model,
Definitely.
but you run a competitive process where you get buyers who need your business, who understand the economies at scale and understand the synergies, and running that broad approach and bringing the true market to the table is how we're able to identify then truly what your business is worth.
No doubt. That's
Good.
exactly right. I can't add to that. No notes.
Well, good.
Any other questions that you think might be good,
The last
coming from?
question, yeah, and we'll end on this because it ties into who our clients are.
Hmm,
Business owners, family men and women, um, they do good work,
they
right?
do.
The value is more than just their EBITDA. And I run into this question a lot from business owners, tied to the what's my business worth
Yeah,
question, of
sure.
course. It's the intrinsic value. It's the
Mm,
relationships that you have with your longstanding customers or accountants or third party vendors or suppliers, that when the proverbial you know what hits the fan, they're still there. They're rock solid.
yeah,
How do you value that? Or how much
sure.
emphasis does the market place on not just my valuation by a multiple of EBITDA
Sure.
perceived, but more so on the true intrinsic value of this business? There's a lifeblood, there's a heartbeat, there are
Definitely.
people that are connected. How do you articulate that, and how do you square that up to a buyer?
No, it's a great question. You're asking about the sort of what we call in finance the goodwill of the business, right? Sort of the value above the sort of intrinsic value of the assets, right? So assets have a value, and you do actually do a sort of you ascribe value to each asset in a deal, and certainly in an asset deal, you do that. And whatever is above sort of the value of the hard assets becomes goodwill. But goodwill really is something quite different than that. And so think of a business that is incredibly founder dependent. All the relationships are held by a single person. That same person makes every decision. So what happens when that guy goes on a 3-week cruise, a river cruise? Lovely. His wife finally going to get away, right?
Viking
Kids are,
cruise
yeah,
down the
Viking,
Danube.
exactly. Hey, we're leaving the kids, in good hands with grandma and grandpa, and we're going to go on a river cruise. What happens to that business? That's what a buyer is asking. Think of the same exact business, but for the last 5 years, that seller or that business owner has been distributing functional ownership. So the finance function has an owner, whether it's a CFO or whoever it happens to be, VP of finance. HR has an owner. Sales has an owner. You've got a marketing function. Like you've got people who are empowered with decision rights to make decisions in those distinct functions. Which business is more durable? Which business can survive that business owner going away for 3 weeks or 3 months, 3 years,
Right.
right? The one that has pushed down relationships, decision rights, and functional ownership to other folks in the business. Hopefully younger people in the business who have a lot more runway, who are incentivized by a buyer coming in and saying, you know what, we're going to put together an options pool or profits or, SARs, whatever we want to call them today. Stock appreciation rights. That's what
Mhm.
SARs are. And we see profits, interests, lots of ways to do it. But you're going to benefit from all this growth that you create going forward. We're going to back you guys. Which one has more value? The one that is incredibly tied to a single charismatic leader, or the one that's been sort of diversified across a huge subset of operators? You tell me.
Certainly the one that has more operators at the table, right?
Right, right. So, and that shows up in valuation. So, my advice to any business owner who really wants to have a business that will survive them for generations is to build it such that they could not show up tomorrow and nothing happens, other than everything functions perfectly.
Right.
And you show up, you write checks, you show up there, and you're part of the fabric of the place. You sort of help with culture and all that stuff, right? It doesn't mean you can't have a full time job, but you have to have this leadership distributed amongst different layers and not just so founder dependent. And that's what I would encourage folks to do as early as possible. And you can start with just bringing people to meetings. So you're going to meet your oldest customer, and it's a key relationship. And you've got a young buck salesperson, and she's incredibly talented. And you're going to incentivize her to be the next generation of sales leadership. Bring her along. What you'll find is that people, when they're given the opportunity, will show their charisma and their gravitas, and people will start, ascending, and the customers will start gravitating more to the person who's got more energy. And invariably, the younger person has more energy than us old folk, right? So it's about giving them opportunities and giving the client opportunities to see that you've got depth behind you. Because someday a client's like, what happens when I see you every single time? What happens when you're not here? Is this business just you? So it isn't even just in a business sale. You've actually created a more durable business if you never sell. And that's really, I mean, for me, durability is the most important thing in a business. It isn't growth. Even like cost efficiency. It's durability. And that's what buyers are looking for today more than anything else. Something that they know can survive that transaction. So they're looking for businesses that are not led by a charismatic leader, that everything is tied to that person. They're
Well,
looking for things that are more distributed and
yeah,
spread.
not just the key man, right? Where all the relationships are through that one individual, right? So
Right.
So from a valuation perspective, right, the key there is distribute that to your team, understand that there's some longevity. It almost stress tests the business a little bit,
It does.
understanding that, those that are beneath you are, incentivized and motivated to continuously grow themselves personally, their own value, right, within their, their own DNA, but also then within the business and ultimately to the acquirer. Is there a connection there that buyers intrinsically notice, or is it through a process or through manager meetings with buyers directly where that is something that is, what our business owners should be highlighting.
Yeah. So I think that it happens at the first conversation, and they're subtle, right? So talk about your third largest customer. Like, who holds that relationship?
Mhm.
Now, like, do you call on that guy? Is it how long have you had that relation? Oh, it's been 23 years. Oh, wow, great. That's a long standing relationship. Are you still, still involved in that one? Or, oh yeah, I'm the lead on that one. It's one of our oldest customers. Okay, just make a little
Noted.
note, little mental note. So it doesn't happen in a single meeting, like, three quarters of the way through diligence. It starts at that very first conversation, and buyers are good at this. They're going to figure it out. You can't just hide the fact that you are the only decision maker in the business and that you own all the relationships. And also understand that that business, if you get hit by a car tomorrow and you survive and you're okay, but you're in the hospital for 3 weeks and you can't come into the office for 6, your business is going to absolutely, it's going to have a real problem.
Right.
So this is not about selling. This is about building a business that's going to survive you, even you having, like, the flu for a couple weeks. Like, if your business is not going to survive that, or it's going to take a hit, then you've got to figure out a way to build a sort of more durable leadership team.
Yeah. It's a morbid conversation, right? But it's one that every business owner should be having, right? If I'm no longer here
Yeah.
or if I get hit by that proverbial bus, what happens then? to the relationships that you have, if your employees are so important, right? Like there needs to be a succession plan in place. So if doomsday comes to me personally as a business owner,
Yeah.
that, those that are loyal to me and I'm signing their paychecks, right? That pays their mortgages and kids' tuition and food on the table. So what do you say to those that aren't yet ready, kind of bringing this full circle, but maybe looking for an advisor,
Yeah.
right? Or the benefits of quote unquote, I'm not ready to sell, but I should be ready to have a conversation about what I need to be doing to prepare, right? So might not be for an exit, but it could be for, the big yellow school bus that I step out,
Yeah.
look in the oncoming traffic. What are your thoughts behind that? Should I be doing that as a business owner? Is it responsible? What are the downsides? What are the potential upsides? In short, maybe we'll finish up. What are your thoughts around just having that preparation, right? And having an M&A advisor, like what we do here at Benchmark,
Yeah.
to really help prepare our business owners on maybe things that they just haven't thought of yet.
Yeah. So I think what I've noticed, and again, I've been a business operator, business owner, is you sort of operate in an echo chamber. And I know you've heard me say this before. So, yeah, you have. I probably said it far too many times, but when you're in an echo chamber, all you hear back is the sound of your own voice, and it's
Sounds
glorious.
amazing.
Yes, it does. It sounds glorious because, we're so smart. And, having that outside perspective on that business, because you can't I'm 6'1". At one point I was 6'2". So I sort of operate in benchmark at the 6'1" and a quarter, level view. I can't deliver a 30,000-foot view on this business. I'm too embedded. I'm in it. I can on other businesses, and I do, and it's really helpful and useful. So bringing in someone to take a look at your business and figure out, hey, what were the holes? What are my opportunities? I'd love to have that conversation with people here at Benchmark. We see more
Mhm.
businesses than anybody.
Right.
We talk to more business owners than anybody. We talk to more buyers than anybody, and depending upon what we sort of deliver to you in terms of our feedback, you may or may not want to go forward and go to market. But at least you've got someone that you built a relationship with, so that when you're ready to go, that you know who you can call, at least one of the people you can call, and we're not afraid to compete against other folks if that's in their on their mind. I'd also say, and I've been saying this, like you need to have trusted advisors. I think it's so critical. A lot of businesses will build out eventually a board of directors. The board of directors represents the shareholders. They're a fiduciary for the shareholders, and it's really important. I serve on the board for Benchmark. Our job is to be a fiduciary for the shareholders of Benchmark. An advisory board is very different. An advisory board is really there for the CEO, not for the shareholders. They don't care about the shareholders. That's not their mandate. Their mandate is to be a sounding board and advisors to the CEO. So they serve very different functions. They're both very important. One thing you can do as a business owner is start developing an advisory board. And again, I'm happy to have that conversation with people because I've been talking about this for 20 years. When I was a VC, we preached this like crazy. And that was a long time ago. So this is one of the strategies, but build out a, an advisory board that will complement your skill set. So you don't want to manufacture another echo chamber. You've got one. You need to have people that are around you. Now, the best is to have them on your team. So if you have a CFO, okay, let's make sure that that CFO will stand up to you and tell you when you're wrong.
Right.
Hold that mirror up and give you the carrot and the stick when required. But another way to do it, and they can be complementary. They don't have to be sort of, zero sum, is to build out an advisory board and make sure you've got people who have skills that you don't have, that have experiences that you just lack. And hopefully you have at least one person who knows what it looks like when it gets big and how to get it there. Because if you want to grow this thing, you need to have someone around you who can teach you how to adapt, how to react, what it looks like when it gets big, so that you don't make the same mistakes they did.
And it begs the question, I've always done things because that's just the way I've always done things, right?
Sure.
And it gives a different perspective there from those who have done it in a different direction. And you mentioned one thing that I do love about Benchmark is being industry agnostic. We get to
Mm,
see a lot of different business owners, and it's interesting that
yeah.
every business owner is different. We treat them very uniquely. Every transaction is different. Every shareholder objective is different. Every market timing, right, is different. But there's a common fabric that's woven, at least from my perspective, that I identify in business owners, and it's that they are smart enough to recognize that they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, they're overcomers, they're entrepreneurs by spirit. They have just a tenacious, competitive spirit that helps drive them when things get tough and
Yeah.
helps them lean in when things are great. But I like the idea of that advisory board to just give a different perspective,
Yeah.
right? And to get me out of that echo chamber, to hear and view things from a different point of view that someone else may have thought about or experienced that I haven't yet thought of or experienced. And you know, certainly can understand the value of that for a lot of our, you know, a lot of our clients as well, and even business owners that may just be listening in here as well.
Yeah. I think you want to have folks around you who will tell you what they think and aren't afraid to give you information and answers that you may not like. And so that's why it's good to have an external group that, don't work for you.
Right.
That and you've got to give up some equity usually to get these folks on board. These are high functioning people. It isn't like they'll do it for free. You might have some buddies who will do it. I've got some friends that I help out, and I like doing it. I do it because I love them and I really like doing it. But if you want to get the best version of that person, you're going to have to incentivize them. We
Right.
we are, we are self motivated, self interested animals. We are. We have. It's bred into us. It's evolution. It's how we survive. So you want to get the best out of the best people, you're going to have to incentivize them. You have to be willing to be told when you're just doing it wrong, when you're making some mistakes, and be willing and open to hearing that feedback and course correcting.
Right.
Because these guys are type A. These guys and gals are type A personalities, and oftentimes it's their sheer will that gets them to the point where they are today, and that's great. That's how you get from, 0 to maybe 8, $10 million in revenue. To get to the next inflection point, you need other people telling you when you're wrong.
Right.
Now, you might still override them, but be willing to actually listen to them and be willing to be convinced that you're wrong. If you have that openness, it's an unlock for a lot of folks. And again, that external advisory board, even a fractional advisory board, we've been talking about that a little bit here. That notion is pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd encourage folks to really give us a call. We're here, we're open and available to have conversations about some of the holes you have in your business. Every business has holes. We have them. Tesla has them. Google has them. Nvidia has them. They all do, right? And if you're open and honest about them, and you have a plan to attack them with some really good people, you know you, you will find yourself in an inflection point. If you have the capital to attack that inflection point, there's no stopping.
Yeah. And I mentioned, you know, kind of there's two things that our clients are, you know, very much congruent with, and you kind of teed it up there. It is that inflection
Yeah.
point, right? And it's usually a business owner, right, who's wearing as many hats as he or she can possibly wear, and it's at that 8, 9, 10 million point, and running a $12 million business is much different
It
than a
is.
$7 or $8 million business. And you know, having some outside support, albeit it could be a number of different things, one of which being, you know, an advisory board or, you know, a full-time CTO or CFO or CMO, or building out
Right.
that C-suite, which again, arguably then puts you back into this discussion of, well, do I keep growing if my margins are now compressing, or do I keep living the lifestyle that makes me a nice, healthy lifestyle, or not a nice, healthy living? But if you really want to grow the business and you really want to understand what its full potential can be, you almost have to get out of your own way, right? And have a
You
little
do.
bit of, you know, humble pie there in a respectful way, you know, to understand that there's others that may be a little bit better at this than I am. I'm great at what I do,
Right.
you know, but you have to complement that on the other side as well.
And part of that is a sort of a surgery to remove, sort of separate the conjoined twins that are sort of the business owner's personal identity and their business identity. And sometimes they're one and the same and they are conjoined. So part of that process can be, okay, you are a person that exists outside of the sphere of working as this business owner. And for a lot of our clients, it's very difficult, right? Because they all their relationships, their wealth today, yesterday, and the future tied to this business. They introduce themselves as this business owner, and that's all they know themselves as. And oftentimes it happens when you sell a business, it happens at the same time that your kids have gone off to college. So you're no longer, Dara Shareef, the father of Lily and Michaela, and, one of the owners of Benchmark. If this ever sold, and we're not selling, but if that ever happened and both of those happened at the same time, I wouldn't know how to describe myself. So
Right.
I'm one of them, right? So fortunately, I've got one going to college and one more that's 4 years away. So we're good there, and we're not selling this business. But, that if that happening at the same time, that 58-year-old that has this happening at the same time, they're lost. Their identity has been shattered, or maybe they never had one
Right.
because they started the business at 22 years old or 18 years old, and they were always that. And that's how they built out their profile to the community. They are a community leader. They're always asked to donate for the silent auction and to do a foursome and all of those things. And they're thought of and they're invited to every big community event because they own and run a business. And when that goes away, some of that stops, and they've got to find comfort in their personal identity. Now, some people are really good at compartmentalizing, and they have both. Some less so. So that's a part of the process. Sort of establishing who you are outside of the business is an important part of that process.
And you probably had never thought about it for the past 25 years,
Right.
right? Until you start, having these conversations become a bit more reality. And no matter how you splice it, it's going to be an emotional decision, right?
Definitely.
And, kind of really finishes with what we teed up with was making, more informed decisions with greater information and having the right to change your opinion. I find that Benchmark brings a great deal of empathy into these equations and, understand what business owners truly are after, what makes them tick,
Yeah.
and then highlighting those, right? And understanding that, if you're never going to sell to private equity, okay, maybe we'll look for a good strategic, right? And understanding first the why,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We may change your mind on that as we've done, met multiple times in the past, but more so just understanding as a business owner what you're going through. Many of us are business owners ourselves. We've gone through successful, maybe unsuccessful processes in
Yeah.
the past, but really taking comfort in a group that understands who you are, not just what you are. And it can be difficult for a business owner to think, what's next?
Definitely. And you mentioned empathy, and it's one of the things that I talk about a lot. Here, you probably heard me mention it a number of times. I'm sure. Yeah.
Stole that from
Okay.
you.
Please. And again, I'm sure I stole it from someone else. The best ideas are out there in the ether,
They're
and
not mine. Fair enough.
repurpose them, and off they go. I totally agree. I mean, these folks are struggling. They're struggling with this personal identity, and you have to figure out a way to speak with them sort of at their own sort of level. And that's why we hire people who are, reformed business owners like myself. Or I'm in recovery, but I was a venture capitalist. I know what the buyer thinks like, and I can know what the seller or founder kind of thinks like. And that's the part that I think I bring to the table. And Will Sullivan, runs our transaction team, for our East Coast operation, he was a business owner. He knows he can have empathy for our clients because he was our client. Right. We hire a lot of folks in leadership roles that come from that side of the business. It's such an important component, and it's why we look for that.
Yeah.
So it's a great summary. I
And what
appreciate
I
it.
love about that too is oftentimes, the best decision for Benchmark isn't the best decision for our clients, right? And we
That's right.
very much ensure that, our interests are aligned with yours. And if it's potentially leaving money on the table for us, but it's a better transaction for you, we're going to recommend and encourage that, whatever opportunity is best for you, right? So, oftentimes questions that I field are, well, you're just in it for the money in the transaction, and they're not wrong, right? We're a transactional driven
We
business.
are.
Don't get that mistaken, right? We're very good at what we do,
We are.
but it's because we understand the business, right? From the inside out, we understand what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. We understand how to create that competitive tension, right? Bringing more options and more opportunities to the table, and then allowing our clients to pick which one's best, right? And which one is most aligned with your interests? What's the right timing for you and the family? Is this the right time?
Right.
And just again, I think that puts a bow on the empathy
It
side of
does.
things. And despite being a transactional business with
Yeah.
over 200 transactions a year, it's a byproduct of truly understanding and being an actual partner, right, with our clients as opposed to just servicing them, for example.
No doubt. And I'll summarize this again just after your summary is I talk about sort of monetizing a life's work and finding a caretaker for your legacy. That's a quantitative and a qualitative measure, right? And that's a balanced scorecard. So a balanced scorecard in MBA speak, and I don't do it often, but I did get one a long time ago, is taking all the qualitative and the quantitative and sort of mixing them together and figuring out, that's the rubric. It isn't just financial and it isn't just, qualitative. Our clients are complex, right? So they want good value for their money. They also want the best fit. They want their employees taken care of. They want culture. It matters, right? So we present our clients these offers in a balanced scorecard approach because all of it matters, right? That matrix shows, cash at close, and it shows the structure of the deal, and it shows, hey, what are they going to do with it? What's their ability to actually fund this deal? What's the cultural alignment of the deal? And those things matter to our clients. And that's why we showcase it that way in that balanced scorecard because all of it matters. And with some clients, that sort of qualitative piece matters more than the quantitative piece. So if you get offers that are, 80, 90, and $100 million, that's a lot of money. No matter what deal you take, it's a lot of money.
Right.
It's probably enough money. It's enough money to create generational wealth. At that point, it's about, well, so if you like the $80 million offer the best, of course we're going to try and drive that number up. That's our job and try to give you the best of both worlds. But if that's the deal you want to take, then that's the deal we're gonna get you signed and get that deal done. So, we are aligned in that way. And either way, we're gonna make a nice fee for our efforts. And we want to create the best possible outcome. We are strategic thinkers. And sometimes the best opportunity is not the best financial deal. And when our clients see that and push that, as soon as they make that decision, we are attacking that deal, trying to get it done.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of, or you mentioned earlier, the PBK transaction.
Yeah.
Great video testimonial that I would encourage everyone to sort out, on our website because Dan Bongino speaks to that, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes we were negotiating not necessarily in Benchmark's favor, but for the client, right?
Yeah.
And presenting opportunities that, as architects, great business, right? Heck of a strong business,
Yeah.
wonderful management team, and he wanted to protect them as well.
Definitely.
And probably a really good summation of what we've just been discussing today is what Mr. Bongino says there is, hey, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we trusted the advisors in the room. And also then everyone else moving forward is now investing from their own fund and creating a next generation of wealth as well. But just a wonderful transaction that I know we're proud of here at Benchmark that speaks to a lot of what our clients are asking for, or maybe what they're looking for, with regards to a potential advisor or potential partner about helping them realize what the full gain of their life's work can be.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a better benefactor or evangelist for Benchmark than Dan Bojo. He's one of my favorite people I've ever met, and loves what we do. And he's a high functioning human. But some of our best clients, who are our biggest spokespeople, are the smartest people on the planet. And they recognize, I think one of their superpowers is they're really good at knowing what they're great at and outsourcing the rest of it. And they empower us to be great at what we do. And they see it and they value it and they attack. So, Dan is a great spokesman for us, probably more so than I am, more so than Steven. He tells the Benchmark story better than anybody we have. And we've asked him to do it a number of times and he volunteers even more. So, well, this has been a great conversation, Ben. I really appreciate you coming in
Yeah,
and
thank
being
you,
sort of
Dara.
that stand-in for the audience. I think we got a lot out of it. And you're in the front lines. We'll probably bring Ben back. And remember, the best outcomes aren't found. They're built.